When you hear the word home, it probably has all kinds of associations for you. For some people, it might be the sight and sound of coming home to your kids playing in the garden. For others, it might be the smell of a home-cooked meal. And for others, it might be the peace of walking through the door and knowing that your day's ended and there's a peaceful, tranquil arena for you to spend your next few hours with your family or your friends or your digs mates. A home is a special place, and I think Jesus understood this, and as a result the home became a primary discipleship tool for him to use to build into people's lives. He healed the sick in the home. Peter's mother-in-law he healed. He had, while he was preaching, a man lowered through the roof. He had to do a few home renovations thereafter, but healing came to that man. It was profound what Jesus did within the home. He didn't just heal in the home, but he instructed people and taught them amazing things about the kingdom of heaven. And not only that, he spent a lot of time relating. He had friends, Mary, Martha, Lazarus. He hung out in Matthew, the tax collector's home, and many tax collectors and sinners came around that table that he was dining at. I love the story at the end of Matthew where it says Jesus told his disciples to go into the city and to get hold of a man who would be waiting there and tell him, "We need your house." And that's where they had the Last Supper. The home is an amazing place. We've scanned around our region and come across some amazing people that have opened their homes with this in mind. My home can be used as a primary discipleship tool to change people's lives. You're going to, over the next few minutes, hear a few stories of people's homes that have been used in the hand of God. Take a listen.
I think we initially started soon after we were married. It was in 2010. Yeah, it's just a love for people and a love to create a space for people to be able to grow in the Word and to get to know Jesus more and to just share their problems and have a space where they can talk freely and just be themselves outside of a work environment. It's such a relaxed environment in a home group. It's just a space where they can be themselves and just share.
We also felt like we'd been part of a Connect group for a long time, and we felt like we had more to offer than sitting in someone's lounge now. We wanted people in our lounge, and we had more to offer than just being part of a Connect group, to actually start leading one and being able to accommodate more people in that area.
I remember asking God to literally double our home group. And I think that's a prayer that some home group leaders may be scared of, but that every home group leader should probably pray and ask God to come in and expand and grow. And within 2 weeks, God did that. He literally doubled our home group. And so we had a space problem, and we initially knocked out the wall between our lounge and dining room to try and make more space for them, to accommodate them. And some more people started coming, and so we took one of the bedrooms on the other side of the lounge and broke a door in through there. That became our coffee room and tea and coffee room and entertainment room and that. And some more people came, and pretty soon we knocked out the wall between the lounge and the bedroom, which is behind us. And so that enabled us to accommodate we got up to about 35 people in the home group, which was really, really awesome. It was an incredible season, and along with that came about 15 kids, and so we knocked out a wall between the kitchen and the garage, opened up the garage and made it a little mini uptown, and gave the kids their own space to be themselves. Yeah. Leading a Connect group it's inspiring, and it just gets you into the space of other people and allows you to become a part of their lives and have them become a part of your lives. It's about making family.
Sanibonani, igama lami nguNhlakanipho, and I lead a Connect group in Mbali. Been leading a Connect group for the past couple of years, and what I love about leading is that it just integrates people into the life of the church, and we grow together, we work together. No one is made to be an island, and we get to be in community and walk and grow and share lives and excitement and sadness, and we're able to grow together in the walk of the Lord. It's important to meet in a home because it just means good when you're opening up your home to others, for others to come and feel accommodated by you, and you don't have to have a lot, you just have to have a willing heart. And it's very important for us to open our homes and let people flow, because we're a community moving together towards one direction, Jesus Christ.
Hi, I'm HAYLEY. I'm 17. I go to the South Side, and I started leading a Connect group when I was 14.
Hey, I'm KEREN. I'm from the South Side. I'm 14 years old, and I started leading a Connect group in 2017.
I've had girls get saved through being in my Connect group. It's been incredible. I've had the opportunity to pray for some girls and lead them to Jesus. That's probably one of the most rewarding moments of leading a Connect group. And there's also been girls who've been in my Connect group and have got saved at church. That's also been incredible.
To lead a Connect group, I don't think that you have to be like an older person or someone that's out of school. I think you can do it whenever you feel you're ready to, if that's where God's called you. God used young people to impact people's lives, and you also, as a young person, don't have to just impact people that are younger than you. You can also lead people older than you.
To lead a Connect group, you just need a house and parents who are keen.
Some of the things that I love most about leading a Connect group is firstly the friendships that I've made over the years. Still today, some of my very best friends have come out of sitting in my lounge every week, being in my Connect group, and they've developed further. I also love the fact that people grow in Connect group like never before. I've had many people come into Connect group and tell me that they are not ever able to pray out loud. They've never done that before, and a few months later you see them praying out loud for the first time. I also love that we share a meal together every week. I personally love food, so that's a certain highlight for me. I also love that you are there for people's biggest moments. You're there praying for them to get a new job, and you see breakthrough come through. You see people whose family members are sick in hospital, and you're able to go and pray with them. You see people moving house, and you're able to take them a meal. You're there for people's birthdays, and you're able to surprise them with cake and candles. I love being there for the big moments in people's lives. I grew up in a home which was always full of people, and no matter how much food there was on the table, there was always a spare seat at our dining room table for somebody to join in the supper meal. No matter how new or faded our furniture was in the lounge, there was always space for somebody to join us in the lounge too. And so I grew up thinking this is really normal, and I've longed to keep on going in that direction. When I moved to Durban from Pietermaritzburg, we went house hunting, and I had two criteria for the house that I moved into. One was that it would have a nice lounge space that we could have people over, and the second thing was that it would have enough parking that was safe so that people could park their cars and come to Connect group. And I found the perfect spot, but it was out of our price range, and we prayed and asked the Lord, please give us this house because it will serve your kingdom so well. The landlady phoned me the next day, and she dropped the rent by 2,000 rand so that we could afford to live in that home. And for me, my home has become such a tool to minister to people, to see people come out of the storms of life and find a safe place of peace, and to see people grow and to see friendships formed. And that home has been used for countless Connect group meetings, and so I'm passionate about using your home as a tool in God's kingdom. I have a saying when people come to my house, and I say continually, I'm just so glad that you're here, and that is how I feel about my home, that I'm so glad that people get to come over.
Once upon a time, there was a half-German boy from Greytown who came from a fairly conservative family of 5 children. And when he was 16, he strongly felt God call him to really serve his people, and so he's been doing so ever since. Fast forward a couple of years, January 2005, there came along a little Xhosa boy from the Eastern Cape to Pietermaritzburg. And this little Xhosa boy knew no one in the entire province, let alone Pietermaritzburg. But fortunately for him, the first person that he met from Pietermaritzburg was none other than the half-German boy from Greytown. He invited him to church, and the Xhosa boy came to church, and soon thereafter, he played a significant role in finding a connect group for him. No more than a year later, the half-German boy figured that maybe we could risk with this little Xhosa boy, and he gave him the opportunity to lead his very first connect group. And soon thereafter, he found out that this little Xhosa boy could sing a little bit. And so he invited him to join the band. Some of my friends are saying he can't. And so he invited him to join the band. Long story cut short, the little Xhosa boy still serves in the life of this local church, largely due to the efforts of the half-German boy. What happened to the half-German boy? Well, he married, he became a father of 3, but equally important, he carried on to connect and integrate hundreds of people into this local church. Friends, it is my privilege, and I ask you to please put your hands together as I introduce to you to my friend and the best connector and integrator of people, Mark Wimble.
Good afternoon. Am I on? Can you hear me there, right? Okay, Shoes said to me that this would be a humorous introduction. That wasn't humorous at all. But it's really great to be with you this afternoon. I'd like to start off, if we go back to that video that we just watched. Weren't those some inspiring stories? I'd like you to note the diversity of personalities there, the diversity of environments there. Those are 4 or 5 different connect group leaders that you might say those are the cream of the crop. They aren't. They're just a handful of a few hundred connect group leaders all over this region that every single week open their homes to countless people. I think we should start out this little session by putting our hands together for every single connect group leader. So as you've figured out, we're going to be having a look at this environment of the home, connecting people, connect groups, small groups, whatever you'd like to call them, for a few minutes this afternoon. I was thinking about it. People all over the world spend millions of rands getting themselves into debt, trying to beautify their homes to create this sense in their home that there's no place like home. They move into environments, maybe move out of their parents' home into their own flat or their own digs or wherever it may be. And the big goal is to one day own your own home. And when you own your own home, that's just a start to eventually owning the idyllic home, the place where you can really say, and it can be said of your home, there's no place like home. You got some other people that they can't wait to get out of home, and they travel all around the world to the greatest and most diverse places, and they come to this conclusion after many months or years of travel that there's no place like home. And so they come back. Now there's a scripture in Luke chapter 9, it's Luke writing, and there's Jesus walking along with a bunch of individuals, and they make this outlandish claim. They say to Jesus, they say, "We will follow you wherever you go." How many of you felt that at times? Maybe it's in the middle of worship or at the end of an ignition kind of preach. You're like, "I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus, knowing the thoughts and the motives of the heart, he says to them, he says, "Hey, foxes have dens." He says, "Birds have nests." And in a sense, he's saying people have homes, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. What is Jesus saying? You see, Jesus is ushering in a kingdom. Jesus came from a home. He had a mother, he had a father, he had brothers, he had the smell of mom's home cooking. He had a comfortable bed. But this would happen is that Jesus moved out of home. In a sense, he closed the door on there's no place like home, and he understood that there's a mission that came from heaven where he was going to go throughout the regions, and it wasn't going to be so much there's no place like home, but he was going to use the home. It's going to change from there's no place like home to there's no place like a home. You see, I wonder what Jesus would say to this statement, there's no place like home, today. We let it roll off our tongue so easily. He might come and invade our world and say, hey, isn't that a bit insular? Isn't that a bit small-minded? Isn't that a bit narrow? There's no place like home, really. The comforts, the home cooking, the protected environment, the place where you just like to dig down and just dial out. Wow. What did he say? See, in this day and age, we love to worship our homes. And I'd like to charge us today, right from the outset, is let's stop worshiping our homes and let's start worshiping Jesus. And when we start to do this, the home becomes a tool in the hand of Jesus. While I've been preparing this week, I've been thinking about my history of living in a home. I was born in 1979, and I realized that from this moment all the way back till that day, I've never lived in a home where there hasn't been people, as you would have heard my sister saying, and there hasn't been a small group that's met. 1979 to 1982, Somerset West, I don't remember anything, but they told me, those parents of mine, that they used to facilitate a small group. 1982 to 1985, we moved to Springs. This was my earliest memory of small groups. I remember falling asleep under a dining room table, peering out every now and again, seeing worship taking place, seeing discussions. I remember one particular night, there was a man that visited in my parents' small group, and he had faith to pray for the other man that was in a wheelchair. I mean, this is crazy stuff, 5 years old. I remember seeing with these eyes, this man being helped out of his wheelchair and shuffling across the carpet. We moved from Springs, and a few months later, we went back to Springs to tidy up some logistics around our home, and we went to go visit the man who had been in the wheelchair. His name was Fire. We knocked on the door, and Fire opened the door. He wasn't in a wheelchair. He had sold his wheelchair, and he was alive and well. From Springs, we moved to Greytown. The half-German boy from Greytown. You didn't know the other part of my history. We moved to Greytown, and this was again, I was age 6 to 10. My parents ran small groups. This was a different stage of life. We attended small groups as kids, not because of the people there, but because of the eats on the table, right? Look in the eye, greet them politely, one eye on the eats table. From Greytown, we moved to Pietermaritzburg, and we lived just down the drag here on Holder Road. And again, I was moving into my teens. My parents facilitated small groups in their lounge. It was a little bit different. I was growing up. I was beginning to interface with adults who loved Jesus. I remember greeting them, eating with them, and then going to my room and doing homework. And while doing homework, hearing the discussions, the laughter, hearing the worship that emanated from that room. My mom used to try and play the guitar, D, G, and A, the same songs every single week. Terrible, but somehow the presence of God. In that same home, as we got into our teens, one young elder, Guy Feldman, who used to lead the fusion here, he had this slogan, you can lead from when you're young. I was 13 years old, and that's when I started to lead in a little small group at this home. Adults on a Wednesday, teenagers on a Friday. We used to congregate together. We played gaining grounds for as long as possible as a new leader. And then we'd congregate around the word and prayer and all the rest. We moved from Holder Road to Villiers Drive. I was going into my 20s, adult connect group on a Wednesday. I started to lead a 20s connect group on a Tuesday. My siblings who were younger, they started to lead fusion connect groups on a Friday. I'm told that at a certain point, because it was a split-level house, there were 2 connect groups simultaneously happening. We moved from Villiers Drive. I had to get out of there. And I moved into a place with Sean Clarence, the worship leader here. Those were good days. Again, the criteria for that home was not what the ensuite bathroom looked like, but it was how big is the lounge. 2 of us blokes. It wasn't very tidy. Covers over the couches. Probably smelt. Wasn't the greatest. But we used to open our home. Humble. Didn't have a lot. One particular evening we decided we were going to invite people over. And all we could offer them was hot dogs and oros. And you know, young people, they follow Jesus, but they certainly follow food. And the people arrived. And we disposed of 150 hot dogs that night. We were passing them over the people's heads. It was chaos. The police knocked on the door and said, "What on earth is happening?" We answered, "Jesus is king," something like that. I got rid of Sean, which was a good day in my life. And I found a wife. And things got a bit better within the home. We continued to host small groups. We moved to Chase Valley. We bought our first house. Nothing on the scale of Sean and Jen Garnett, who did multiple renovations. But I'll never forget one particular leader in the life of this church phoning me one morning and saying, "Your lounge is too small." What do you mean? "We had a meeting there last night. No one fitted in. I'm coming." "What do you mean you're coming?" "I've got the breakers." "What is a breaker?" "We're coming to knock a wall out and another wall." And it was too late. 3 days later, the renovation had been done. We moved from there to Woodhouse Road. Now, Woodhouse Road, where we lived, was beautiful because, you know, people can stay late sometimes in your Connect group. This driveway was straight, which meant everyone parked in a line. The first person that wanted to leave, they all had to leave. Beautiful. From Woodhouse Road, we moved to Durban 3 years ago. We're renting a place down there and got challenges in terms of little things here, then everywhere, but open home. What am I saying? I guess I'm saying today, I don't know any different, but that isn't enough to keep us going on opening our home. We've got to get before God and get the heart of Jesus on what He has to say about our homes. Now, this is my anchor text this afternoon. We'll have a look at one or two other scriptures. But I want to read this in Acts chapter 5 and verse 42. It says, "Day after day in the temple courts and from house to house, they never stopped." Can you say never stopped? Say it again, never stopped. Never stopped teaching and proclaiming the good news that Jesus Christ is Lord. Now, when we read about the early church, we've got to understand two things. Firstly, some of it is description and other of it is prescription. Description, in a sense, it describes what was happening back then, but might not come through the grid and work right now. Maybe description was day after day. Maybe we can't meet day after day, but we've got a heart to. But some of the prescription that we see in the early church had to do with the temple courts and from house to house. Now, I'm going to ask Inni. Where's Inni? Do you want to come up so long? Where's the guy? Are you there? Why don't you give this guy a hand as he comes up? This is our Zulu warrior. And what I want you to maybe hold up for us, just in each hand. On one side, we have the temple courts. And on the other side, we have from house to house. And I'm going to ask you to start beating that drum. So this is the picture I want to give to you today. Is in a sense, God had it in mind that the church would arise like a beating drum with this clarion call that would go out to all the world describing this amazing king and calling the nations to come. And it would beat and it would be heard all across. It would be clear, the call. But this is what has happened across the world. You can stop one side. The church has become exemplary at doing one side of the beating drum. What is that? That is meeting in the temple courts. We expend ourselves. We give ourselves. So much energy is spent making sure that Sunday is perfect. Sunday works. The music team is all together. That people arrive. That it's faith-filled. And I'm not trying to destroy those things. But it's just one half of what God had in mind. The early church never stopped on the temple court and from house to house. You can keep it going. Both sides. Crank it up. This is what God had in mind. Both sides. Temple courts and from house to house. They never stopped. They never stopped. They never stopped. Wherever they went, whatever they did, they never stopped. Temple courts from house to house. Thank you, Inni. Looks like he wants to stay. Thank you, Annie. Give him a hand. So if God's intention on this issue is that we never stop and we never tire, why is it that we stop? Well, let me give you a few reasons. Number one is that we just get tired. I mean, look at the guy. I mean, that's a specimen wherever he is. Not everyone's going to rip their shirt off and just beat the drum. You say, I'm just right-handed. My left hand is weak. So we get tired. We give in to the things that are maybe a little bit more difficult. But we lose our shape along the way. What's another reason? Well, what about bad experiences? Oh, bad experiences. I'll tell you a few bad experiences. What about kids? Kids should never have been created, right? Out of hand kids in your home is one way to inoculate you against ever leading a connect group again. Okay, what about damages to your stuff? I remember speaking to a connect group leader that he said to me, listen, it's time. I'm packing it in. What's the reason? No. There's been damages. What do you mean damages? Wear and tear on my couch. I said to him, like, are you saying depreciation is going to stop you from leading a connect group? Yeah, absolutely. Be gone with you. What about no one arrived? Connect group leader got his Romany creams and hot chocolates. Putting them out every single week. No one arrived. Honey, put it in a container that keeps it fresh for next week. What about the bad experience of they never leave? Some blurry-eyed connect group leaders, for those that attend connect groups, you never knew this. You thought your connect leader just loved you. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's got to do with where the time is. They love you to a point. There was a connect group leader, famous 20s connect group leader. This was his story. He had someone in his group that was so persistent in staying and hanging out. Everyone had eventually left. This connect group leader had moved from the lounge to the passage to his room. He had got changed into his boxes. He was in bed. The guy was still sitting in the passage talking. He had to say to him, listen, bud, the keys are on the kitchen table. Let yourself out and leave them in the post box. These are real issues. I know of people, connect group leaders, they ring a bell at a time. I know of others that have buzzwords like the milk has run out, which means go away. What are some other reasons we stop? Maybe it's because the world has changed. We fall foul of this ideology that says it's different these days. It's dangerous in the world these days. We build higher fences. We put a perimeter around our property. There's no more the days of putting a liter of milk across the fence. And because of that, it's become a state of our heart. What about this? We become familiar with the status quo. We just got bored. I know what will happen in Connect Group. Really? As a 5-year-old, I didn't anticipate a man standing up out of a wheelchair at a Connect Group. Where Jesus is in the house, anything is possible. What about this? Why do we stop? Maybe it's because we feel inadequate. I don't know enough. My place isn't big enough. It's not, maybe when I get to a certain stage of life, only then could God use me in this arena. But I'd like to say today that there's no way that the church will truly grow if our small groups are not truly strong. There's no way that people will be discipled and come into the fullness of God and mature if they're not sitting in the lounges of people that love them and care for them and are committed to them to disciple them and lead them in the way they should go. You see, when churches start, I think it's fairly easy to keep the percentages up. When we started down in Durban, I used to track how many people were part of our site and how many were part of connect groups. And 2 years along, I've noticed that the 90% that were in small groups has begun to dwindle a little bit. Why? It's the first thing that people give up. Why? I'm busy. It's midweek. I've got kids. All the excuses come out. And what do people do? They just lean toward the one side of the drum. Temple courts, Sunday. It's a lot easier. Nothing's required of me. Nothing will be asked of me. I don't have to be vulnerable. I don't have to put anything in. That's a great way to live. But it's not the way you've been designed to live. You see, I'd like to be contentious today. What if I had to say to you that the most important meeting of the week is a Tuesday or a Wednesday? What would you say? Some was saying, I have been serving the Lord for 55 years. Not going to change me now. Got my seat on a Sunday. But let me suggest this. God's intention is that every environment grows. But if this environment grows and you miss out, no one notices. But if this environment grows and the connect groups grow and you're part of a small group and you miss out, someone notices. And when you hit a crisis and when you hit the valley, someone notices, someone comes. Not just an organization, the living, alive organism called the church, the body of Jesus Christ at work. I'd like to talk for a few moments about what the Bible has to say about the home. I've got 6 points. Number one, some of these are realities, some of these are to charge us. Number one, being hospitable can be hard work. That's the good news this afternoon. Opening your home can be hard work. In 1 Peter 4 verse 9, Peter says this, offer hospitality without grumbling. Part of me is really encouraged when I read that scripture. Why? Because even some of these super apostles realized and recognized that it's not always easy. It's not always viable. It's not always within line of my priorities. Now, can I remind us today that grumbling is a grave sin? It might be the wife that grumbles and says, I don't have enough, or I'm not ready enough, or I really hate packing the dishes in the oven and hoping no one opens it. Or until you get, the wife might grumble. It might be the husband that grumbles and says, I just want to go to sleep. It might be the kids that grumble and say, my toys are broken again by those other kids. This is the tragedy of grumbling. Grumbling got the Israelites nowhere, and yet they thought that they were making progress. You see, the Israelites, they began, their linear journey turned into a circular journey, and this is the amazing thing. From the top view, it was so apparent that they were going in a circle, but for them, as they walked, carrying their burden, it would have appeared to be like we're making progress. Another step forward, army, march, here we go, not realizing that you've been grumbling and your whole journey, the trajectory that you're meant to be on has changed. How many of us have spent time grumbling about people being in our homes? God wants to set us free of that. Give us the prize in front of our eyes again. God wants to use your home. It's my sister. I'm so challenged. There's a couple that have just moved down to Durban, Wes and Rach. Many of you will know them. This is what happened Friday night a few months ago. They just arrived, and we wanted to just give them a meal. And this is what I'd like to suggest, friends. Break the perimeter in people's lives. Get into their hearts. Get into their homes. Don't be polite. Amazing things happen in the home. So we went to their home to deliver this meal. Very simple. And we said, we want to deliver the meal, but we want to eat it with you. And so we got our 3 boys in a line. Doesn't often happen. But there they were. And we arrived at their house. They just moved. And what we didn't realize is that they'd sold their house, lock, stock and barrel. All their furniture was sold as well. So they bought a house. They'd renovated it and bought all new furniture. Beautiful. We walked into the house. Magnificent place. Then I looked at my children. I realized they were not clean. They had no shoes on. My middle son, he literally walked into the door as if he owned the place. He said, how's it? And ran and dived onto this new couch. I mean, the whole energy in the room just changed in that moment. Dad and Mom were spluttering a little bit. But this was their comment to us. Relax. What are couches meant to be for? They're meant to be used. They set us free that night. I love that. Number 2, what does the Bible have to say about the home? The dinner table is the perfect starting point. Say, I want God's power to be at work in my life, through my life. I want to disciple. I want to be involved in the process of people's lives transforming. I'm suggesting to you today the perfect starting point is the dinner table. You don't have to know a lot. You don't have to be hugely spiritual. But you can start with a humble offering of a meal. This is what it says in Mark chapter 2. As he passed by, he saw Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. And as he reclined at the table in his house. So he says, "Follow me." And then he doubles back and says, "Hey, where's your house, by the way?" And arrives at his house, and it says he's reclining at the table, and he's eating with them. And it says many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And he goes on to say it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but it's the sick. Can I suggest that connect groups change the heart of connect group changes when you have the sick, the tax collectors, and the sinners in the middle of them. Suddenly the old codgers that have been attending connect groups for 30 years, they start to remember things they've forgotten. They start to realize, shucks, I didn't even realize there's such a question as X, Y, and Z. It sharpens your faith. A few years ago, we went to a wedding of a couple in this church, or the parents on this church, Jim and Sarah. And for the reception, Jim had crafted these tables that I just loved. They were made of wooden trusses, and they were these long, narrow tables. And I think he made 20 or 40 of them. And during the wedding reception, I thought, I wonder what a man like this would do with them afterwards. And so I went and asked him, could I buy the table off you? Which he said, absolutely. And we brought the table into our home. And this was the reason we brought it into our home, is that our table just fitted our family. And we thought, this is the perfect table to make space for others. And we brought it into our home. And the part I love about this table is that it's not completely even. There's gaps in between the trusses. There's generally always a little bit of leftover food from the boys. Stuff falls through. Some of the planks are a little bit warped. Sometimes you got to stabilize your plate. And for me, this is a beautiful picture of what God had in mind. He doesn't have perfection in mind in your home. He has an open heart and an open home in mind. I heard someone made this quote recently that said, don't build higher fences, build longer tables. Don't build higher fences, build longer tables. I'd like to suggest today, it's time for dining room Christianity again. You know, dining room Christianity, I think most of us overeat. I mean, I look at myself, I think, yep. What does that mean? Well, sometimes we don't need to have two, we can just have one. This is not about extending your budget. It's just about, maybe you don't need to have that nut so that someone else can have. Don't keep looking at what you don't have. Look at what you do have, because that's the principle of the kingdom. Most of us overeat and overcater. Have one burger, not two. Drink water and not juice. Bring and share, and you'll never run out. Number 3, Jesus has your home in his sights. I mentioned this on the video, Matthew 26, verse 18. Go into the city to a certain man and tell him, the teacher says, my time is at hand. I am going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house. Don't you love that? Tell him, my time is at hand. I am going to celebrate at your house. And the rabble called his disciples arrived and descended at that man's house. We don't know who he is, but I wonder whether he had any excuses. I wonder whether there was even a discussion. It doesn't say so. But I'd like to charge you today. Some sitting here today, Jesus Christ is making a demand on your home and your space today. Okay, it doesn't feel comfortable, Mark. You'll know. Conviction of God, this isn't anything but allowing God to work. See, I've written in my Bible that homes were created for a Savior. Design your home to facilitate ministry. Consider buying or renting a place that facilitates ministry and not just your own needs. We've got a couple that have just joined the Durban site, and they've got a palatial home. It's magnificent. We went to have dinner with them, and we were beginning to talk to them. They told us the story of doing this renovation, and they stayed in one room as a family while they did all these renovations. And at the end of it, they eked out this little comment. We don't view ourselves as leaders, but we've wondered whether maybe somewhere, somehow, at some point, this place could be used for a group. What a wonderful little utterance. And so we spoke to them a few weeks ago, and they were very nervous. And this is what's happening next Friday, is a fusion connect group with some young teenagers is starting in their home. I'm going to suggest to them as parents, go lock yourselves away or go out for dinner. Come back and transport them to Gateway where they're going to have youth. But thank you for opening your home. Number 4, open homes unlock potential for the power of God. In Acts chapter 28, Paul's on the Isle of Malta, and it says that he's entertained by Publius, the chief of the island. And he's entertained hospitably for 3 days. And he hears that this man's father is sick. And he goes to him and he prays for him and he heals him. And it says the whole island, all the sick come and they're healed. I read that verse recently and I thought to myself, you know what? The sick and every excuse under the book can stop the work of God in our homes. But my father's sick. But things aren't on an equilibrium in terms of my personal world. And yet, as the power of God knocks and unlocks one, it streams out and begins to affect the multitudes. Number 5, an open home is the natural byproduct of salvation. In Acts chapter 16, Lydia, it says, when she and the members of her household were baptized, she invited us to her home. She said, if you consider me a believer in the Lord, come and stay at my house. And it ends off saying, and she persuaded us. What does that mean? We didn't want to go, or we had other things in mind. But she says, as a final kind of argument, she says, if you see me as a believer in the Lord, come to my house. Why? Natural byproduct of salvation, open home. Number 6, the home is the primary environment for authentic learning. In Acts chapter 20, it says, you know that I have not hesitated to preach anything that would be helpful to you, but have taught you publicly and from house to house. Taught you publicly in this kind of forum, but I've also taught you from house to house. You see, when I look at that scripture, I think one of the most authentic ways to learn is within a home. It's one of the ways that God has designed kids to grow, is not just in a school environment where it's formal communication. God's designed that fathers and mothers get around their kids and they show them the way. It's not even talking necessarily, it's showing and modeling them the way. When we dial out of our small groups, when we lose our conviction and our shape, when our people are not part of this environment, we lose an element of learning and growing and maturing. This afternoon, I want to end by having a look at this story and making this charge to us. In Mark chapter 2, it tells a story of this paralytic with his 4 friends, and it mentions 4 friends. And the 4 friends pick up this paralytic, and you may know the story very well, and they take him to Jesus, and Jesus is in a home, and it's so crowded in the home. And so they decide to put him through the roof, and the roof is made of mud and thatch and manure. And sometimes you've got to dig through the stuff to get to Jesus. And they get him into the home with Jesus in the home, and an amazing miracle takes place. As I began to ponder the scripture, I thought about this little slogan: you just need 4 friends. You just need 4 friends to start a group. You just need 4 friends to see the power of God outworked within a home. You see, this is how it worked, I think, is that those 4 friends were just 4 friends. But somewhere in the 4 friends, one of them stood up with an idea. Maybe he was the leader. And he said, we've got another buddy, or there's a paralytic over there that deserves a chance to be in the presence of Jesus. And somehow he managed to convince his 3 buddies that this was a good idea, not to hang out together. That's just a social club. No, it's a good idea to look on a paralytic and to take him to Jesus. And so the 5 of them made their way to Jesus with different roles. One was leading the discussion or the procession. 3 of them were happy followers and supporters, and there was a paralytic with need. And they break into a home, and the power of Jesus is at work there. This is my charge to us today. You just need 4 friends. I've got a friend who's very new in his faith, and he's got a friend who's got a wife. And the 3 of them and another couple have just decided it's time. We're going to open our lounge. He's bought a house. It's a flat. I saw it the other day. It's pretty small. He's been very concerned that it's too small. It's not too small. Why? Some of them can sit on the floor. Most of us are padded enough. And so they started 3 weeks ago. And this is the competition the friends are having. Who invites the most people? This isn't just about discipling people in our church. This is a way to reach people outside of the church. And so he's been telling me story after story of different people that have been coming, some of them distant from God, distant from the church, weird ideologies, but starting around a dining room table, around a meal, and then clicking into some of the discipleship tools that we've got. You just need 4 friends. This isn't about having a leadership gift or leadership anointing or someone having prophesied over you. Do you have a home? I don't have a home. Do you have 4 friends? Do you have a home? I do have a home. I'm not going to lead, but I've got a home. Somewhere there can be synergy in those 2 responses. And this is my charge. I've been praying. I'm serious about this. I've been praying. I've said to my wife and a few others, I don't know why I've spent so long preparing on this track. Some guys call me Mr. Connect in this church because I've preached so many times on connect groups. But I kid you not, I've been praying and saying, God, what is it that you want? And I want to charge us. We don't talk about numbers too often. But I did a scan of the numbers of connect groups in this church across all of our sites. We've got 208 connect groups. That's including 20s and fusion. The South has got a number. They've got a 44-year history. But there's a smattering of groups around all the other sites. And this is what I felt God charged me with, is that 200 connect groups needs to become 300 connect groups. And that's what I want to charge you with today. How are we going to get to the 300 connect groups? It's going to require some who have been retired connect group leaders to say, I'm going to give it a crack again. I've had bad experiences. I've done it in a certain way. I'm going to try another way. I'm going to find 4 friends. I had 4 enemies last time I did it. I'm going to do it with 4 friends. I agree with you. For some, you've been teetering on should I, shouldn't I. This is the best way to do it. Do it and then tell someone. No, but I've got to go through the elders. Well, don't call it a connect. Just start. And then go back to the elders and say, I've started this thing. Wonderful. We've got a young guy who's a Sharks rugby player. Came back from France and he said to me, I don't know what's happening, but all around me, these guys are just getting saved. Baptized them on the beach. Another guy that's been into drugs and all sorts, come to faith. And what are you doing with them? No, they just meet in my lounge every Thursday night. But I feel so awkward about it. It's not under recovering. Well, just get the kingdom out there. Some of these things will make sense as you keep holding out the word of truth. He didn't even realize he's a leader. I'm going to ask the guys, I'm coming to an end now. I'm going to ask the guys to put up a slide of our resources. Because I think this is important. Here's some of the things that we have on our website. In a few days' time, we've got most of the details of the guys that are registered at this Leaders Summit. And what we're going to do is we're going to WhatsApp you a link that you can literally click on and you can go onto our website. I've had a look at a number of these resources that have been sent out as 5-minute sound bites or little video podcasts, whatever you want to call them. And there's some excellent material here. It's not just motivation and inspiration. Some of it is tools that we need. What happens when I have 15 kids and I'm not the Garnets? Well, there's some things that you can do. Have a look at some of these things. Dealing with grief, crisis, elements of a connect group. Maybe go back to the first one. Healthy connect groups, changing a group dynamic. If you're a current leader, sharing vision, handling transition. Maybe go to the next slide. Elements of a connect group, facilitating a discussion, focusing outward, handling crisis. Next one, please. Having fun and growing, introducing new people, listening, kids, local missions, kids. Again, pastoral prayer, kids again. And then working with Connect Group Prep. You can go onto the website yourself and go and have a look at some of these resources. What we also do for a Connect Group leader, and we can't mandate this, but I'd like to suggest this. What follows our preaching series, every single Sunday, we devote ourselves to the preaching of the Word. We wait on God, and it's what God's saying to our church. But our Connect Group Prep is the trailer that rides on that, to dive off into various other little subcategories of Christian living and maturity. It's not bad, but it's not wise building. Tap into that Connect Group Prep. There's a weekly email that's sent out, and you can register for that email, which gives you the prep, it gives you a link to the sermon, and it gives you a little leadership tool that you can have a look at as well. In ending, we've put this little card on your chair, and I'm going to hand over to Grant in a moment. But this is what it says. There's no place like home. There's no place like our home. Connect groups. You just need 4 friends. And if you want to flip to the back, you can fill out your details. Please fill out your details. And we've given you 6 different areas that you can get involved in a small group. If you're here and you're not part of a small group, please get involved. You might have tried out one. There's a diversity of different ones that you can try, and keep trying. Keep talking to your leaders. If you want to be trained to lead, if you want to lead a group, if you want to plant or start another group, if you want to host a group in a home or in your home, and if you want to receive weekly resources, please tick that. You've got a pencil on your chair, and you can start filling those things out now. I think in this church, there must be around 4,000 people. That means that there is at least 1,000 homes that God wants to fill with His people and His glory. Thank you very much.